Welcome to Challenge the Stats Patreon Edition. EDHREC is built on the stats that make up the Commander format, but sometimes those stats might not represent what's best for a deck, and our patrons have some secret tech in their decks that they want to share with all of you. One card that they think sees too little play for their favorite commander, and one that perhaps sees too much. This week's challenge is brought to us by John Carroll, who has some tech to share for his Baba Lysaga deck entitled, "You Thought I Was Going to Call This Deck Baby Lasagna." Shout out to Joey Schultz. Challenge the Stats is sponsored by Ultimate Guard, and for being featured in this video, we'll be sending John some Ultimate Guard swag, including Ultimate Guard's excellent Katana sleeves, which Joey, Matt, and I use in all our decks. Now, let's get to the challenge. Baba Lysaga, Night Witch, is a 3-mana human warlock costing 1 in Golgari. It's a 3/3 and has a tap ability that says, sacrifice up to 3 permanents. If there were 3 or more card types among the sacrificed permanents, each opponent loses 3 life, you gain 3 life, and you draw 3 cards. For underplayed cards, John thinks Vanewitch Coven should see more play. Vanewitch Coven is a 3-mana vampire warlock costing 2 and a black. It's a 3/3, and it has menace and says, whenever you gain life, you may pay black. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. John writes, Vanewitch Coven is currently in just 17% of Baba Lysaga decks, and it should be way more. While it only satisfies the creature portion of Lysaga's ability, how Vanewitch Coven works with Lysaga is you activate Lysaga and sacrifice whatever 3 permanents you want, including a creature in play. Lysaga's ability will resolve and you will draw 3 and drain 3 life from your opponents, and you gain 3 life. Once that ability resolves, Vanewitch Coven will see you gain life and trigger. You can then pay the 1 black and target the creature you just sacrificed to Lysaga with Coven's ability, because the creature will now be in the graveyard by the time the ability triggers due to sacrificing permanents as part of the cost. This interaction is a pain for opponents to deal with, as you keep abusing creatures and ETBs that netted you 3 cards for a very small cost of 1 black mana. John says he runs it in his deck and it's an absolute house. Yeah, that's a fantastic description of why Vanewitch Coven should see more play, John, for sure. However, if you want to add that to your list, something needs to come out, and John thinks a good candidate might be Gloomshrieker, a creature currently showing up in 61% of Baba Lysaga decks. Gloomshrieker costs 3 mana, 1 in Golgari. It's a 2/1 cat beast with menace, and it says, when Gloomshrieker enters the battlefield, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If Gloomshrieker would die, exile it instead. Now, John writes here, while it does fill in as an enchantment and a creature for your types, and it does get you back a permanent, having to exile it after it dies is a huge downside to where you can't abuse the card to its fullest potential like you can cards like Eternal Witness. And while it shouldn't necessarily be cut from every deck, it's just a one-time effect in most cases that you can only really utilize to draw cards off Lysaga. There are other better options in the enchantment creature department like Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Courser of Kruphix, and Shugeki Jukai Visionary. That makes complete sense, John. Thank you for suggesting Vanewitch Coven as a possible addition to these decks, and Gloomshrieker as a possible cut. If you want to see more cool tech, you can find John's Baba Lysaga deck linked in the video description below at architect.com. And if you'd like to have your deck and secret tech featured here on Challenge the Stats, head over to patreon.com/EDHRECast to sign up. Thanks again for those suggestions. Thanks for supporting the show. Thanks to Ultimate Guard for sponsoring Challenge the Stats. And thank you for listening. And remember, EDHREC your deck before you wreck your deck.